Well, welcome to the Missions Book Podcast. Today, I'm pleased to introduce Jake Hines, the author of a forthcoming book called From Argentina to Zimbabwe, an Alphabet Prayer Adventure. And this is another one of the kids' books that we are offering at William Carey Publishing to inspire children to get involved in missions and learn about the countries of the world. So Jake, I'm pleased to introduce Jake. He is passionate about helping Christians find their role in God's global mission, and he currently serves at New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary, teaches at Level College, and pastors at Forest Church. So Jake, I'm excited to have you here today and hear about your book.
Awesome. Thank you, Maddie, for having me on. It's a pleasure to be able to partner together on this project and be able to see it to fruition. So this book, From Argentina to Zimbabwe, it really fits in with kind of the vision that you shared right at the beginning of the podcast, that we're seeking to inspire children to participate in God's mission. And so I think that's my desire with this book as well. And so this work is going to go from A to Z, from Argentina to Zimbabwe, and it's going to include 26 countries overall. And so the hope is to give children and parents just a scope of what God is doing all around the world through these 26 snapshots. And along the way, with each country, they'll be introduced to a fun fact just to kind of get them learning and involved with this country. They also have a Bible verse to be able to meditate on or even to memorize that kind of centers around the gospel need that is there. And it also includes a prayer, just prayer for local churches in this area, and then especially prayer for the lost and for the unreached represented in these different countries. It's my hope that this book will be useful in a couple of different ways. One, for families or parents who are just wanting to read through an entire kids book straight through, just like you kind of normally would before bedtime. But then the hope is also that it wouldn't just be a book you read through once and then just kind of put it back on the shelf, but that you'd be able to use this as a daily resource, as a devotional, or as a prayer guide. So I kind of think through, I want this book to be on your bedside table, but then also on your dinner table as well, to be able to kind of pick back up and to be able to regularly be introducing your children to different countries around the world and how we can pray for gospel need there.
Great. Yeah, I love how you say this book is both for the bedside table and for the dinner table. It really captures both settings that a family could use really well. So, Jake, do you mind sharing what motivated you to write this book? What gave you the idea?
We talk about the idea of the dinner table, and this is really where this book originated, was at my dinner table of starting a young family with wife and a little baby girl that we have at home, and just thinking, what are the rhythms that we want to set in place to keep our child's and our children's just hearts set on God's work among the nations. And so we were using some resources, and we were had our Bibles next to us and had different prayer guides stacked up on the dinner table. But there was nothing really that we could find that kind of did all of these, but then did them in a very short and kind of bite-sized way, just to be able to pick up the dinner table, read through this in a couple of minutes, and then pray before dinner. And so it was my hope to find something that would be very easy and efficient for parents who are maybe trying to get involved in prayer for the nations for the very first time and don't really know how, but just to be able to have this resource to where you can keep this prayer for the world happening, and not just once, but the hope is that this would create a rhythm in the lives of families, whether it's through this book or through other ones that they get in the future, to be able to build a culture of prayer even within their own homes that would then cause them to look externally to the needs around them and to the world around them.
Yeah, that's really great. I love how this stemmed from your own family. Like, you saw this need, and it will now be used by so many other different families around the world. So, Jake, we've talked previously about the role of children in ministry and missions. Sometimes we tend to think of missions as something children grow into later. But I love that this book allows them to participate in a way now. How do you see this book fitting into that?
Definitely. I think that the role of children is something that we can undervalue at times, and sometimes when we think about the call into missions, we think that this is something that happens much later in life, towards a college decision or a seminary decision. But I think about some of the even the missionary biographies that lots of us are familiar with William Carey or Adoniram Judson or guys like those, and you begin to see, even as you read the sections about their childhood, that God was already beginning to prepare in them a heart that loved Him in cases, but also a heart that was aware of the things going on around the world and wanted to be knowledgeable and aware of those things. And so I think for children, families, churches reading this book, I hope is just that it will give you just a little bit of awareness that we are not isolated into our own communities or cities, but that we have a world around us that God has called us to actively participate in. So one, I think just this learning piece, this awareness piece. And then I think that there's also ways that children have the opportunity to step forward into some meaningful engagement right now. I think even of the role of the local church, how that is kind of the prime the training ground where children are discipled, and they're able to, Lord willing, watch their parents be able to grow and mature as disciples as well. But it's also the chance for them to be in a community where a people can know them, care for them deeply, but also begin to see in them different passions, different desires, different gifts that, Lord willing, can one day be able to flourish into a life that desires to live on mission. And then I think, of course, as my book tries to focus in on just the role of prayer, I always think about in Luke chapter 10, whenever Jesus in the book mentions this verse that, Jesus tells them to pray for the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into the harvest. But then the very next thing that you see take place in that passage is that the disciples themselves, who were instructed to pray to the Lord of the harvest, they were the ones who were then sent out into the harvest to go and serve. And so that's really my hope for children, but even for parents and families and church members that read this book, that it would give them a desire to pray to the Lord of the harvest, to send out laborers into the harvest, but then to look inwardly and say, is that me that you're calling into the harvest? And if so, how are you calling me to be involved? Whether it's praying, of course, giving, being a part of the sending process through churches, but even going themselves. And so it's my hope that this would just be a reminder for us, because we talk about prayer a lot in mission circles, but it's my hope that we take that talk and we really put it into practice, and then we pray for the needs there, but then also look inwardly and say, Lord, these things that I'm praying for, how does that actually impact the way that you're calling me to obey and to be faithful day to day?
Yeah, that's awesome. I really hope that this book will inspire many more young laborers for the harvest. Thank you so much, Jake, for sharing with us about your book. It's been a pleasure having you.
This has been a joy. Thanks for having me. And so excited to get this resource out, and pray that it's a blessing to many families and churches as they consider God's mission.